Does having a high IQ matter in the modern day? A question I asked some friends of mine while we were out at dinner a week ago. I personally don't think it matters as much anymore, and most of my friends initially argued against this. Before I begin, let me just say that I have a fairly respectable IQ level myself, so I truly have no dog in this fight. However, I stand firm in my belief that having a high IQ doesn't matter in the modern day, and I'll explain why. The conversation started over dinner and drinks with my friends. It was a pretty mixed group. We were discussing IQ levels, and the topic of race came into it. Ash, one of my black friends, conceded that his race statistically has one of the lower average IQs, while I mentioned that, if I recall correctly, Chinese people tend to score the highest. But then I thought about something interesting about him. I looked at his life and how he's living, and I came to the conclusion that he's fairly successful, not just financially, but in many other aspects too. That got me thinking seriously about the topic of this video. Like I said, my friendship group is diverse, so we often have tense or touchy conversations about race, religion, politics, and more, and that day was no different. My Chinese friend, Mike, said having a high IQ still matters a lot, regardless of the time we live in, because it influences rational thinking and decision making, especially in high stakes situations. We all agreed with that point. But Mike was stunned when I asked him to name other instances where having a high IQ really matters in the modern day. You'll notice that I keep saying modern day, and that's for a reason I'll explain shortly. Also at this dinner was my Hispanic friend, Lue, and he argued that intelligence has largely been replaced by AI. Many tough scenarios that used to require a sharp mind can now be solved instantly with ChatGPT or similar tools. Mike actually agreed and added that he predicts the average IQ across the board will probably drop over the next 10-15 years, simply because of how lazy people are becoming and how overly reliant we are on AI to solve even the most basic of problems. I agreed too, thinking about how many times I've asked ChatGPT to do something I'm perfectly capable of doing myself, but just couldn't be bothered. Our overindulgence in AI as a brain proves that having a high IQ doesn't matter in the modern day, because you don't need one to use it effectively, and that's my key point. But not all my friends were convinced. So, I invited them to play a little game. I asked them to list a few things they believed all men, regardless of race, religion, nationality, class, or creed, would consider measurements of success. The question caught them off guard, and they were clearly overthinking it, so I stepped in to help. Instead, I said I'd list some examples, and they could just agree or disagree. There was no voting system, just gut-level, opinion-based responses. First, I asked if they considered a man being rich as a measurement of success. Money rich, wealthy, moneyed, regardless of the legal route he took to acquire the money. They all overwhelmingly agreed. Next, I asked if a man being combat efficient was a sign of success. What this looks like is a man who's trained in martial arts, for instance, knows how to defend himself in a situation where he may have to step in to protect a loved one. Another example is a man who is trained and proficient with firearm use and knows how to disassemble and assemble a gun, how to reload them, how to aim and shoot, and likely has some form of weapons arsenal. Again, unanimous agreement. Then I asked if having a family, a conventional nuclear family with a wife, 2 or 3 kids, maybe a dog and a goldfish, was considered a success. They agreed again, especially since, historically, only about 40% of men have procreated, compared to around 90% of women. Lastly, I asked if they considered a man having material possessions a measurement of success, such as a nice house in a nice area, a good car, stylish clothes, etc. This one got a bit of pushback, with some saying materialism is subjective. But ultimately, they agreed that a man with a clear sense of style, who presents himself well, earns respect, and carries himself in a manner that men and women can admire, is in itself a form of success. Wealthy possessions alone aren't a measurement of success. I could have listed more, but I stuck with these 3 or 4 key areas that I believe most men are put on this earth to strive for and what most women look for in a partner. Then I asked them the real question. Do you necessarily need a high IQ to achieve any of those things in modern day? They were taken aback, and I was glad. By laying out those common definitions of success and having them agree, they couldn't really backtrack or deny the logic now. I could see Mike preparing a rebuttal, but before he had a chance, I jumped in. Mike, think of all the kids making crazy money dancing all over TikTok. or the online escorts killing it on OnlyFans. Think of all the people in the online space making dumb money by just clicking a button and simply connecting the dots. 20 years ago, you had to go to college to learn the actual skills to do the actual work. You had to actually understand complex systems and have the brain capacity to achieve true excellence. And luckily, there's still an element of that today. However, with each day, those requirements becomes lesser and lesser. And now, with AI, you can set up a dropshipping store that looks more legit than major brands, fully stocked with products, professional copy, everything done in under an hour just by clicking a few buttons. It's so systemized now that a literal moron could achieve the same level of online success as someone who spent 5 years getting a degree before the internet age. And with that, I watched Mike disappear into his drink and concede his stance. All of my friends at that table have respectable levels of intelligence. And yes, that matters somewhat. But I'd argue that in today's status-driven society, where success is measured by the money you make, the car you drive, the house you live in, the people you know, the family you have, IQ just doesn't factor into the equation anymore as much. I know a lot of intelligent people who are broke. Sure, they may have done well academically, but when it comes to actual success as we defined it today, not much to show for it. And on the flip side, I know some pretty dumb people who are absolutely thriving by today's standards. I'd be interested to hear your take on this though.